Belle and Beast are Ruby and Sapphire cards. That's right, Ruby and Sapphire. It is confirmed we're getting double ink color cards in set 7. A huge, and in my opinion, much needed, spicy, exciting addition to Disney Lorcana. I know a lot of people have been saying I'm feeling the game's a little bit stale right now. We need some new keywords. We need some new big stuff. Well, this is the biggest thing we've ever had added to Disney Lorcana, certainly since Locations, which was a year ago, by the way. So perhaps this is a pattern we can expect to see, that once a year we get a big new addition that really changes how the game is going to work. We've also today got a new keyword, and we've also got separate other big news, which is that Ravensburger are ditching Melee and they're making their own software to run events from, which is really exciting and fascinating. We're going to cover all of that. If you're excited, give the video a big old like, and a big shout out to Card Market, who sponsor this channel. Buy your singles from Card Market if you're in Europe. Beast and Belle in Ruby and Sapphire. So first and foremost, let's talk about how this is going to work. And it's actually very clear, because within the rules of Disney Lorcana, it clearly states that you can only play a maximum of 2 ink colors. So let's just say you start off with 0 cards, you're building your deck, and you start off by putting Belle in your deck. You're like, okay, I'm going to build a deck with Belle. Well, there you go. You've already got 2 ink colors. So you've already locked in your ink colors. You're playing Ruby and Sapphire. Now, of course, that means you could put 59 Sapphire cards in your deck or 59 Ruby cards in your deck, but that would still be 2 ink colors because Belle is both, right? So ultimately, Belle and Beast are cards which you can only play in a Ruby Sapphire deck. Now, a lot of you are going to be losing your minds about this and say, oh my God, Spessy, I see you in the comments already. Why are they giving Ruby and Sapphire more cards? Guys, relax, please. These are the first 2, and we've also got a Jafar in Amethyst Steel that we're seeing. Realistically, there is going to be dual ink colors cards for every single color combination, and I would imagine within this set, right? Like, that is so fascinating. So for example, if you imagine that Amber Sapphire, for example, or Emerald and Ruby, which are pretty weak color combinations, imagine we get some really powerful card in that. All it takes is one really powerful dual ink color card, and suddenly you've got a massive reason to play that color combination. So please, everyone, relax. You're saying, why do we need more Ruby and Sapphire cards? Well, there's a very, very good chance, I would imagine, that we get 2 cards, seemingly, from every single ink color combination. Maybe we don't, of course we will eventually, but I would imagine, with this being the new kind of big thing of the set, if you actually look at the image of Archazia, it's got 1 blue eye, 1 green eye, so we can probably theorize that Archazia is going to be Emerald Sapphire, for example, and we've seen Bolt, who's going to be Amber Steel. Lady from Lady and the Tramp is likely going to be Emerald Amber. So there's all sorts of things we've already seen, and we can start theorizing about that a bit more. And let's look at the cards, shall we? From a balance point of view, it's something I'm fascinated about, because I think it gives the developers a really interesting mechanic within gameplay to change things slightly. I think the best thing that Disney Lorcana did from a gameplay point of view is having uninkable cards. I think it made deck building absolutely fascinating, because you've got cards like, let's say, Hercules, the Ruby Hercules that's like a Maui. It's got slightly better stats than Maui, but it's uninkable, so it never sees any competitive play. But then you've got other cards like Madame Medusa and Tremaine, which are so inherently powerful, but if they were inkable, you would just play 4 copies of it in every single deck. But because they're uninkable, you can't do that, right? And in a similar way, how uninkable cards are inherently, on average, more powerful than their inkable counterparts, these cards, which can only be played in specific color combinations, in this case Ruby and Sapphire, in theory, should be more powerful than an average card, which is just Ruby or just Sapphire, because you're more restricted in the deck building process. And from a design and gameplay point of view, that provides something really, really fascinating. Like I say, if Bolt's a bad example, but let's say there's a card that's like Ruby Emerald and it's insane, suddenly you've got a reason to play a pretty weak color combination. And also, these cards could be really designed in a specific way to push archetypes. Like someone, I think on Reddit, I read a few days ago, was saying, well, maybe Bolt in Amber Steel could be a bodyguard payoff. Like, there's a bunch of bodyguard cards at the moment in Amber Steel, which just don't see any play. But suddenly, if Bolt is an Amber Steel only card, which turns your bodyguards into absolute units, like just insane cards, well, suddenly you've got a whole reason to play a Bolt Amber Steel Bodyguard deck, right? So these cards could be huge payoff for entire archetypes that aren't seeing competitive play right now. I actually haven't read these cards yet. So let's start with Belle because we can see the whole thing. She's a 9-cost Inkable with a 7/7 stat line that quests for 3. She's Floodborn Hero, Princess Inventor, and she's Shift 7. Now, it doesn't say anything about Shift here, but I'm sure that Shift is still the same keyword, right? It's not like I saw some people theorizing that you could just shift her onto anything. No, I don't believe that's the case. I just believe that there is a lot of text on this card. And so Shift is just, read the rule book. That's what Shift does. I think we've already seen it with Bodyguard, for example. On some cards in the recent sets, it just says Bodyguard and it doesn't explain exactly what a Bodyguard is. Of course, the longer the game goes on, the more text is on these cards. If you're explaining what Shift is and all this text, suddenly we're into Yu-Gi-Oh territory. And I think the developers are clearly wanting to avoid that. So it's not that you can just shift it onto anything. I'm 99.9% sure. It is just the shift you'd expect onto another Belle, which there's a lot of in Sapphire. But also there's Morph. But of course you can't shift Belle onto Morph unless you're playing Sealed, because Morph is in Emerald and Belle cannot be paired with Emerald. So you can only shift it onto the Ruby and Sapphire Bells, of course. Salvage. For each item card in your discard, you pay 1 ink less to play this character using her shift ability. So if you have 1 Porpsicle in your discard, you could shift 6 instead. First part of the ability, very much not very impressive, right? Not impressive at all. Her stats, while impressive, are not spectacular overall either. So I'm expecting something good on the repurpose ability. Whenever this character quests, you may put up to 3 item cards from your discard on the bottom of your deck to gain 1 lore for each item card moved this way. And there it is, everybody. That is the powerful part of Belle. So you can shift her in early, potentially, and then you can put items from your discard back into your deck. So it's going to work really well with item cards which banish after you use them. Often that is a big downside. Like you look at an item, and you're like, okay, well, why would I play this? It banishes itself after 1 moment. Well, with Belle, you've got a reason, because you want an abundance in your discard because it's going to make her cheaper to play. And then you can, if you shift in with her, you can quest immediately. If you're putting 3 item cards back, which is the max, she quests for 6, essentially. This is very much, again, like on the surface, you guys are like, well, this isn't going to see play in Sisu. Sisu with ice blocks? No, probably not. And that's kind of the idea. It's trying to push an entirely different style of Ruby Sapphire deck, which is why I think this mechanic of double ink colors is so fascinating. And the Disney Lorcana game designers are incredible. They do an insane job. And I think that this little tool is in their hands going to make for some insanely interesting decks, because suddenly you've got your normal Ruby Sapphire deck, but then you've got your Belle Mechanic Extraordinaire Ruby Sapphire deck, for example, right? Like maybe Belle's not good enough to have a competitive deck. I don't know. But, I'm sure there's going to be some dual ink color cards. Obviously, Belle is inkable as well, so it's going to be really fascinating to see Beast, the fact that he's uninkable and dual ink color. I would anticipate that this card is going to be insanely strong. So we know that he's 6 cost uninkable. We don't know what he quests for. No. This is not the something my head. I'm really fascinated about the Disney Lorcana story. Very, very interested in this. This is the Shield of Erendale, if I'm not mistaken, which is like some sort of like Sapphire item card from days gone by. Couldn't tell you what it does. So I've had it, is Beast's ability. Exert, spend 2 ink, banish 2 of, I'm going to assume, your items, and deal 5 damage to chosen character for each, maybe? I don't know. Something like that. So it seems like, I would imagine that Beast is putting items from your board into your discard and giving you damage to do it. Because it's Beast and Belle, it's the single player starter deck, it's Ruby Sapphire. Super damn fascinating. Like, honestly, these dual ink color cards are also so perfect for a starter deck, right? Oh man, this is my favorite thing that's ever been added to Disney Lorcana from a gameplay point of view. I think this is so cool. It's so cool in so many ways. I'm obviously a big card game nerd, I love the deck building and the gameplay aspect of it. So I just think from a design point of view, this just gives the devs so much to work with, and it's going to be so amazing to have more diverse things to explore when deck building, which is exactly what you want, right? That's what you're hoping for from a new set. You're really hoping for a few cards to make a big impact, and that's maybe something that we could criticize some of the more recent sets for, right? Like the Ruby Sapphire deck that's seen competitive play, it looked pretty similar last season. There's a few differences, right? But these kinds of big mechanical changes like this can make a huge impact and just diversify the meta. And suddenly, rather than having like 15 ink color combinations, you haven't exactly, but you've almost got 30 now, because you've got like a normal Amber Steel deck, or in this case, you've got a normal Ruby Sapphire deck, but then you've got the deck which tries to maximize these weird dual ink color cards, because I would imagine you're going to see a lot of them being like this very niche game design that's like trying to push a different style of Ruby Sapphire deck. Like, note how these cards are not like another Sisu, right? Or synergizing with Sisus and B-Preps particularly. They're really trying to push like an Oswald deck, for example, right? Oh man, I love it. Let's look at Jafar and Iago. Oops, that's the wrong one. We'll come on to that shortly. That's, of course, the news about the new Ravensburger tournament platform type thing. All right, so Iago we can see fully. He is not a dual ink card, but Jafar is. So Iago, the giant spectral parrot, who is an illusion, by the way, which is a brand new keyword, and a brand new, I don't know what you call these, thingamajigger. And he's got a brand new keyword. When an opponent chooses this character for an action, banish them. Very, very interesting. So Iago is almost like the opposite of Ward, kind of, right? Not exactly. Obviously, with a Ward character, you can't target, whereas Iago is, if targeted, remove it, specifically with an action. So if I used an ice block on Iago, it works as normal. But if I was to use Painting the Roses Red on Iago, which lowers his power by 1 and I draw a card, that would actually just remove him. So he's going to be pretty weak against... Painting the Roses Red certainly comes to mind as a pretty big weakness for Iago. So the illusion is really interesting from a thematic point of view from the story. It looks like Jafar has conjured this illusion of Iago, the giant spectral parrot. I would imagine that he's stolen the Hexwell crown and then he's given it to Jafar. And we, of course, know the reign of Jafar comes in after Archazia's island. Now that the Hexwell crown is mine, I would assume, I shall be a big force in Lorcana that can... No idea. I was going to say stop, but that wouldn't work. Let me know in the comments. The other thing I wanted to mention, actually, with these dual ink colors, mate, the art is so cool, right? Big shout out to John Luren and Nicholas Cole on these two, and it was Coney on the other one, who is someone I've met a few times. I actually met Nicholas Cole recently, too. Very cool. In Paris. So, Jafar, newly crowned, 4-cost inkable. This is not done yet. During an opponent's turn, whenever one of your illusions is banished, you may return that card to your hand. I think. Ooh, whoa! I reckon I just nailed that one. During an opponent's turn, whenever one of your illusions is banished, you may return that card to your hand. That's very thematic. If you look at Iago from the most recent set, it's got my favorite flavor text of set 6. It's that you can get rid of me that easy. It's like a 4-cost, 4/2 Iago that when banished comes back to your hand. He is not an illusion, by the way. So this Jafar in this starter deck, you would imagine a lot of these cards here are going to be illusions, right? Of course, if you're playing a Jafar newly crowned deck, you're going to play 4 Iago illusion cards, and you're going to play some more illusion cards, whatever they might be. And clearly that's probably going to be to do with, what Jafar's trying to conjure up. Hey illusion, maybe. Of course, it's going to have to be an Amethyst Steel. So Amethyst Steel, it seems like, is going to be getting the illusion cards. So we've got a Ruby Sapphire item deck being pushed by these dual ink color cards. And we're getting a Jafar illusion deck being pushed. I mean, for starter decks, these are so perfect, right? Like, this is such a cool concept. Maybe moving on, we'll just see every starter deck have like a dual ink card. It kind of makes sense, right? I think it's really, really cool. I absolutely love it. So in terms of like actually evaluating these cards, Iago 4/6 is a big body, but the vanish part is a keyword, right? Like, this is a big keyword. Now, vanish and illusion are different things. Illusion is a tag. That's the word I was looking for. Vanish is a keyword. But I think it's safe to assume that illusion cards will have the vanish keyword for now, right? Not necessarily all of them, but that seems to be the kind of theme, because they are inherently more powerful because they come with a downside, but that downside is negated somewhat if you have a Jafar on the board, because during an opponent's turn, whenever one of your illusions is banished, you may return that card to your hand. Seems to be the text on Jafar. Very, very cool. I want to try and read Beast a little bit more, because I think the text is not as long as I was thinking. Banish 2 of your items to deal 5 damage to chosen character. It doesn't say banish up to 2 either, by the way. It says exert, spend 2 ink, banish 2 of your items, probably, I'm going to assume, to deal 5 damage to chosen character. Very interesting. Now, Beast, you play him on turn 6. Obviously, you're playing Ruby Sapphire, so you're probably going to play him, let's say, on turn 5. With a Fishbone Quill, you could play him on turn 4. Fishbone on 3, ink, double ink, play Beast. So you could, with Fishbone Quill, which is an item, by the way, so probably you're playing Fishbone Quill in this deck, right? Fishbone Quill, Beast on turn 4, you exert Beast, you spend 2 ink the next turn, so this is on turn 5, you banish your Fishbone Quill and another item, you deal 5 damage for some board presence. We don't know what stats he has. I would wager pretty big stats, actually. I've got a feeling he might be a chunky boy. Again, with the fact that these dual ink card colors, I think, are going to be inherently quite powerful. I think he's going to be a big boy. I would imagine he won't quest for much, because you don't need him to quest, right? He's exerting. So this card, if he's got a lot of lore, will be significantly worse. If this card has 1 lore and big body, I think it's going to be pretty good. And I would imagine it's going to have 1 lore, but some pretty big stats, particularly in terms of willpower. I would imagine it might be like a 3-6 or like a 2-6, something like this. Maybe even like a 4-5, right? Something along those lines that's going to make him difficult to deal with. But quest for 1, because you don't want to quest with him. Very, very cool deck. I'm excited. I'm very, very, very excited for this. Honestly, so cool. Now, let's get on to the other news, because it is big news. And it is that Ravensburger has basically it's ditching Melee. Now, I have to say, I've not been that impressed with Melee, so I'm quite happy about this. Melee, of course, if you aren't familiar, is the tournament platform that's used for Disney Lorcana for both the challenge events and for local events. It feels a bit dated, like the UI when I'm using it. There isn't an app for it. Like, I have to use it on my browser. In Disney Lorcana challenge events, when there was ones going on in Europe and America, there was significant delays to the round starting because there was so many people using Melee. Like, I think it was in Lille in the first one. Everything was going well. And then once the American event had started, of course, because of the time delay, suddenly everything stopped working. So I would imagine that might have been a big factor in why Ravensburger have decided to get their own one created, and I think it's great. I'm really excited. So let's read about it. We're excited to announce a new platform for in-store play reporting, the Ravensburger PlayHub, powered by Cardi.io. Now, some of you might remember Cardi.io from some online tournaments in the past. It was a platform that was used for some online tournaments previously. They had like a deck builder with on the site, but this is a collaboration between those people who have been involved with the Lorcana community in the past and with Ravensburger, which is very, very interesting. So Ravensburger have outsourced it to Cardi.io. We'll be rolling out the Ravensburger PlayHub store registrations, event organizer, and event management tools in early February, with more features to announce soon. Getting started with the Ravensburger PlayHub. Head to ravensburgerplay.com and enter your email address to receive an email announcing what account registrations are open. Once Ravensburger PlayHub's creator event and manager is live, you can run events using Pack Rush, Core Constructed, Draft, or Sealed formats. Hello. I mean, this is great news for the Disney Lorcana community. At the moment, if you want to run a Pack Rush tournament on Melee, it's so much effort. It's a lot of work, isn't it? It's a bit fiddly, but seemingly this is going to be a more personalized experience aimed at Disney Lorcana, and I think it's just great news for everybody. I really, really do. Big shout out to Ravensburger for this. I think it's awesome. When should you move to Ravensburger PlayHub? Obviously, this is aimed at local stores. We want to make sure you have enough time to familiarize yourself with Ravensburger PlayHub once features roll out in early February. While you're introducing players to the new system, please continue to use Melee for all Archasia's Islands events through set Championship. Starting with Reign of Jafar, which is set 8, you must be registered through Ravensburger PlayHub for in-store programs, as this is going to be the only platform to register for Play support going forward. In order to be eligible for the Reign of Jafar pre-release window, stores must sign up and schedule an event in Ravensburger PlayHub. After Reign of Jafar, stores will also need to have run and reported events for continued support materials on future Disney Lorcana TCG sets. But that's not all. I forgot to mention this at the start. There's changes also to the Disney Lorcana Set Championships rewards. Pre-release. This is big. This is big. This is huge. I forgot how big this is. Starting with Reign of Jafar, we will be moving to a pre-release program. What? Hobby retailers can register through Ravensburger PlayHub for the Reign of Jafar pre-release event that will take place 1 week prior to the full set release. In other words, you know how at the moment the local game stores get the stuff 2 weeks early, and then 1 week later you get it at the major stores? No longer. It's going to be 2 weeks later. It was 2 weeks later now it's 1. And instead of just you rock up to your local game store on the day the set releases, you buy your box and you go home like I do. That's what I do, mainly because I try and get home to open my packs. I know most people stick around and play. I tend to get my boxes and go. Well, now there's pre-release events on the day of release. And then 1 week later, the big box stores get it, which is also, I think, great for tournament organizers. Because at the moment, if you have an event that's really close to the set release, some tournament organizers are deciding to actually hold some events with the previous set, like set 6, and some with set 7. Because you want to appease everyone. Because 2 weeks early, like 2 weeks delay from local stores to the big box stores is a lot. So I think a tighter window of 1 week, but also having specific pre-release events is such a W, mate. Ravensburger, you're on fire with these announcements, guys. I'm impressed. I'm not easily impressed. So, starting with Reign of Jafar, we will be moving to a pre-release program. Hobby retailers can register through Ravensburger PlayHub for the Reign of Jafar pre-release event that will take place 1 week prior to the full set release. The full set release includes all distribution channels. Ravensburger PlayHub retailers are permitted to sell product in-store starting with their pre-release event. There will also be promo cards in your Disney Lorcana organized play kit to support a buy a box promotion. Promos only available at Ravensburger PlayHub retailers to incentivize purchases in your stores rather than online. And pre-release pack rush events. Yes. Oh my God, Ravensburger. So many W's are being handed out right now. I'm drowning in W's right now. This is insane. So, what does all this mean? Well, basically, local stores are being massively supported still, but there's now only a 1 week delay between the major retailers, which I think is great for, as I said, tournament organizers and overall the community, just everyone being able to get their hands on product from their place of choice sooner. You know, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, you might not have a local game store that you can get product from, but you might have a Walmart that you could, for example. So now everything's just a week, feels better, and a pre-release event I think is awesome. Buy a box promotions where you get a promo card. That's going to be such a great incentive for stores to make a little bit more money and feel more comfortable ordering in more Lorcana product. It's also a great promotion to get more people at the local stores to get these promo cards. Yes, big W's all around. And pre-release pack rush events? Yes, please. Big one, set championships. The set championship program will only be available through Ravensburger PlayHub following Archazia's Island. So in other words, if you're a store and you want to do set championships from Reign of Jafar, set 8 onwards, you're going to be signed up through Ravensburger PlayHub as opposed to using Melee. Stores can schedule 1 set championships per set. Starting with Archazia's Island, set championship kits will now include 1 champion playmat, 0 runner-up playmats. That's the big thing. It doesn't say that, but that is the key thing. 8 enchanted foil promo cards for the top 8 and 40 non-foil promos featuring the same artwork as the enchanted card in a standard card format instead of the enchanted style. Oh my goodness. Ravensburger, please, we cannot too many W's, mate. We need at least 1 L in here, please. This is too much. We don't. This is amazing. So yeah, 40 promos for non-foils. So if you go to a set championships, you get something. That's so good. That is amazing. I finished 9th recently. I finished 10th. Do you know what I left with? Sadness. I love it. I think the top 8 is great. I think that everyone getting a promo is great and controversial. Do you know what? I think the champion being the only person to get a mat is really good. I know. That's going to be controversial. I know a lot of people are going to be really upset about that. Why do I actually think that's good? So many set championships finals don't even get played right now. So many people are like, well, I'd rather have the non-champion mat. So you can have the champion mat. Let's go home. That's rubbish. I want a champion. I want a huge prize for the first player. And you know what else? I'm not saying everyone's got a playmat. But a lot of people have a playmat. Suddenly, half as many people have a playmat. So if you sit across from someone and they have a Scar play, let's say a Reign of Jafar playmat, well, suddenly I've got a lot more respect from you than I did. I've got twice as much respect for you as I did previously. And what I mean by that is, it's twice as hard to get that playmat. I know the champion playmats, that hasn't really changed. But people don't necessarily like to play with their champion mat, even if they've got one, right? I personally prefer playing on my non-champion mat. I just think halving the amount of play mats, like, okay, the prizes at the top end are lower, but the prizes overall for everyone are higher. And ultimately, that's what set championships is about, right? It's going to be worse for those people that want to go to 18 different stores and sell all their prizes. Respectfully, I don't really care about those people. Like, we do, it's awesome that you want to play the game and go to all these stores, but ultimately set championships are about the community, right? And suddenly, this is going to feel so much better for everybody. Especially the winner. When you're the winner and you're the only one with a playmat, that is going to feel so much better than you and your mate also with a playmat, right? Like, that is a top prize. I like it. I like it a lot. Everything on this, so far, W. Weekly play, let's see if it continues. Programs for weekly constructed and pack rush play to bring players back week to week and build your community will be supported through the organized play kit, as well as digital support for store-specific leaderboards in the Ravensburger PlayHub. Oh my God, Ravensburger, you're actually popping off. This is incredible. We want to hear from you. We want to gather feedback from stores who opt to run events and or weekly player programs so that we can improve our long-term programs for each. Well, I don't run a store, but my feedback is keep doing what you're doing. You're doing awesome. Guys, I'm excited. I think this is the best day of Lorcana news we've had in a very long time. I think this new set is the set of dreams. I'm so excited for the next year of Disney Lorcana suddenly. I mean, I was already excited, but now I'm bursting at the seam, ready to go. Let me know what you think about all of this. I'm really curious to see if you guys have any feedback about the Ravensburger PlayHub, something that you would really like to see on this. Write it down in the comments, and if it's a really good idea, I'll see what I can do to also pass it on. All right, guys, I appreciate you. Give the video a like. This is an exciting time to be a fan of Disney Lorcana, isn't it? It really, really is. See you later.